One. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Delusions of Grandeur. I'm your host, David Streggy, and here in the room with me, I have some of the Delusions of Grandeur crew with me. So, why don't we get started with the first film that we have? We're going to go on about what is considered the Robert Rodriguez Mexico trilogy, which is kind of what I kind of called this discussions because it's all three, and I've got El Mariachi, the first film that we're on about. What year is that from? Does anybody know?
92.
Okay, so
yeah,
coming from 92, I'm just going to pull up IMDb page here to get the synopsis or the synopsis here of what they think this film is about. So, a traveling mariachi, and a mariachi is a musician that carries a guitar or some kind of instrument
yes.
To play music, but is mistaken for a murderous criminal and must hide from a gang bent on killing him. So, that being said, the film was basically all in Spanish, so we actually read for a moment there. Yeah, going over to Jake, why don't you tell your first experience with this film? Was this a first experience or was this not?
It was not. I picked up this trilogy a while back, and I did watch all three pieces of it. I believe that may have been my first time watching this particular one. I think my first watch through for this, like 3 weeks ago, was my second watch of the film. And I watched the commentary track yesterday, so that kind of counts as an additional watch. I was going to do the commentaries on all three, but I just didn't have time for it. But it definitely is one that I had seen, and I think the first time I saw it, I was less than fully impressed, but I still found it an interesting and kind of fun little movie. And this time around, I was a lot more familiar with the backstory, a lot more familiar with what went into it. This is like ultra low budget filmmaking. And if you look at it from that perspective, this is a pretty good film.
Oh, yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I would agree.
For its time and for the shoestring budget that it was on, it was definitely, I think, almost ahead of its time. But it had a kind of an old feel for me. What about you, Mo? Is this your first time and first experience with this film?
Definitely not. I think I saw it probably the same way Jake did. I got the box set when that, like, I don't know if it was when it first came out, but I definitely got the one that had like the slim pack DVDs in it, and that's when I first saw it, was in that set. I'd seen the previous two, or the ones that you know about before you know about. Yeah, exactly. I had no idea El Mariachi existed until I got the box set. And it just kind of coincidentally came at a time when I was starting to get super interested in lower budget movies too. So I was kind of in love with this movie for a bit. And there was quite a few years where I would have told you it was my favorite of the trilogy. I think if you watch them a lot over the years, it kind of fluctuates which one's your favorite, because I've had other times where I'm like feeling Desperado a little more than the other ones. And then sometimes I like the full blown comic book over the top shit of Once Upon a Time. So I've always really enjoyed this, though. It's got that crusty, gritty, low budget action movie feel to it. And it definitely pulls some stuff from like samurai flicks, I think, and things like that, spaghetti westerns. And that's always fun for me because I like that kind of stuff. So it was just a movie I immediately gravitated to, I guess.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So that about sums it up. I was ignorant to its existence till that slim pack.
See, I knew this one by reputation because it does have. It was famous in indie cinema for a long time, but yeah.
I as well was unaware that El Mariachi at first was in fact connected to these other two. But after learning, I definitely ended up picking up a copy for myself. And honestly, actually watching it full on through was the first time, because I remember seeing bits and pieces of it over time, and just not actually sitting down and watching the entirety of it because I kept hearing about it at school and stuff like that, from different people. So I felt like I knew I'd seen it enough to not see much more than that. But actually watching it and seeing it, it's actually got some interesting vibes to it, So
if someone had told me about this in school, I probably would have thought it was one of those badass Mexican action flicks I would see at the video store with the guys with the giant mustaches on them. You ever see those cases? They'd always be like airbrushed covers and shit. Love it.
Oh, you mean like Cheech Marin showing up in the beginning of the second one?
Yeah, well, he was actually he did really good job in the third one too. I thought they got to let out his reins a little bit in the see. I always want to call it the second one because that's how I think of him, as like Desperado, Once Upon a Time, and then El Mariachi is kind of this anomalous thing over here,
So we have this Mariachi, and he's kind of a clean cut looking guy as he shows up in this town, and he goes by El Mariachi in here, but I believe his name in real life is Carlos Gallardo, and I guess there's another guitar carrying guy who evidently has some assassin-like weapons inside his guitar case. And somewhere along the lines, the two end up switching guitar cases.
Yeah, the old classic switcheroo. I feel like there was a bunch of movies back in the day where it'd be like, switched briefcases. Now I'm getting chased by jewel thieves or something. But this is a little bit more intense than that.
Not only that, you also have there is this vague description of this guy's dressed in black and carrying a guitar case.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone doesn't think to find out, is there something else we might use as a distinguishing mark or something?
That seems to be a running theme in the first two movies, is just like, we don't understand what people look like. We're just shooting at fools,
We're just dumb gunmen who just shoot at anything, just to please the boss.
Get those fucking good slow-mo shots at least later.
Right.
Right.
Of course, the first, I believe that he walks into a hotel, and evidently the hotel guy gets a description, and he basically calls in on the guy because evidently, he doesn't know that he's not him.
Right.
He's dead sure that he is him, and to all intents and purposes, he almost becomes him in this particular film. Correct?
Yeah. That's kind of the overall thing of it, really.
Yeah.
He's just a poor chap trying to strum his guitar, and he gets, like swept up in a case of mistaken identity. And
Yeah.
and then, by the end, his dreams are kind of shattered, and he's pissed off, something fierce, and ready to shoot some motherfuckers some more.
But he's also supposedly like this really good mariachi too. He's got that angelic singing voice, that one that could curl the woman's toes, and she could probably just let go of all of her clothes just for the El Mariachi. But he's got that flair about him, and I think that kind of when he first meets, not first meets Domino, but when Domino, which is the woman who owns the bar, who just so happens to be the woman that seems to be the flame of the boss that of all the guys in town.
Right. He has a taste for those, it seems.
What do we think about this Domino character?
She's all right. Well, I mean, it's... Go ahead, Jake. Have at it.
Well, I can go. You can finish your thought, and then I'll go.
I mean, it's hard for me not to just continually compare to Salma Hayek,
Well, yeah. There is no comparison.
Yeah, she serves her purpose,
Yeah. Well, she's
going to be around for long. So.
She's sort of the obligatory, sexy love interest kind of character, but a little bit of the badassery that you see with Salma Hayek's character. Not as much, but a little bit. She, of course, is, let's see here, Consuelo Gomez, one of several people in the film who I believe was technically not an actor, just kind of there. Basically, Carlos Gallardo, the mariachi, is a buddy of Robert Rodriguez, who is a sometime actor, but most of the people in the film are not really actors. So that's kind of
what's interesting.
He did pretty good.
What's interesting is later on, Carlos Gallardi, he ends up showing up as one of the other two guitarists.
He does, and there's like a really awkward scene where he's like, "You ready?" or something to Antonio Banderas, and it's like, "Yeah, dude, he is. He got your job." Like, he's done
I
good.
I forgot about that.
But in any case, so what do we think about the mariachi character? What do we think about his? Do we think that he did an excellent job at being playing both sides innocently?
He definitely did a good job playing the innocent, swept up in something he wasn't really looking for.
And yet, when he ended up having to shoot some people, he was pretty badass. Or I mean, he was at least hitting the marks, I mean, he wasn't like shooting like randomly, and you didn't see him miss anything. So it's like it was a natural ability.
They probably couldn't afford the blanks, dude.
He did not go to stormtrooper school.
Well, they didn't have money for extra blanks for like Antonio Banderas style, where he's just shooting wild all the fucking time.
This was part of the 90s trend of the never run out of bullets in a movie thing, So you got the fucking machine guns that go.
Oh yeah, especially like later and like starting with Desperado. Who is it? John Woo? Isn't he the guy that did like Hard Boiled in those movies? I think it's something else. There's a bunch of Asian movies like that, like a lot of the gunfights are ripped right out of those. Hard Boiled is the one that immediately comes to mind. But
I need to see that one of these days.
It's good.
Has there been any John Woo on this channel? Or movies galore? What's that?
Any action genre?
Any John Woo?
No, we have not.
We'll have to do that one of these days.
Yeah, it seems like something that we should definitely do.
I think we should definitely save that for at least one of the shows. We definitely won't be doing the trilogy kind of thing as much. This was
it's a special occasion, you know.
Yeah.
Wasn't it like Mexican New Year recently or something? We could come up with an excuse for this.
As far as the character of the mariachi, I do like him. It's hard not to. I agree with Mo. It's hard not to be looking at this and thinking Antonio Banderas. I do think this guy doesn't have quite the charisma that Banderas has. I mean, few do, but he does do a good job playing the, like I said, the hapless innocent who gets pulled into this crazy world. He does a fairly convincing job as a musician type. And like you said, Dave, he does a convincing enough job looking like he knows what he's doing once he has to fight back.
Well, yeah. I mean, he kind of has no choice not to. What do we think about the character who was the
Azul?
Azul or whatever his name is. He's kind of chunky, isn't he?
A little bit, yeah.
He reminded me of one of those dudes you'd see as like a henchman or an enforcer for like a Mexican wrestler.
Which is one of the reasons why I'm like, a better physical description. They don't have the same build at all.
No,
it's just an issue of like, you know, the other guy's he's a thick boy, you know.
Yes, he is.
Just a Mexican with a guitar case in Mexico isn't necessarily the best fucking description to go on.
According to Rodriguez, he's the dude was he was a student getting ready to go off to school, and he filmed this role quickly before classes started, but he doesn't really look like it. He looks at least 10 years older.
Yeah, that's mind-boggling.
And I like his introduction where he's just chilling in the jail cell. He's got like his whole setup there, like he's been conducting business all along.
Yeah, that's actually one of my favorite parts of the movie, honestly.
Right. And then he comes out with that guitar case full of crazy equipment and just, goes around shooting up people. He kills 6 and the other dude kills 4. And then there's that little argument with Domino of, you were being modest. You said you only did 4. And he's like, I did 4.
There were 10 people that were killed. My guys do.
Yeah.
I know you did it.
Yeah. And then like Moko, of course, is kind of like, what do you mean 10? Like getting these conflicting reports. And I like how IMDb credits Peter Marquardt's character as Mauricio, but they call him Moko in the film. And he's, of course, the big bad, the big boss. According to Robert Rodriguez, they had joke names for most of the villains. And Moko apparently is the Mexican term for booger.
Right. I was gonna say there's like the affectionate like nicknames like that in Mexico.
I'm not sure how affectionate that nickname is.
Well, it's like it's like bro humor kind of.
Right. And I loved how it made an appearance, a reappearance in Once Upon a Time in Mexico on the dog collar that Mickey Rourke's dog had.
Really?
His dog's named Moko. You didn't catch that?
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, I loved it.
That dog had mad eye boogers though at one part. And I was like,
yeah.
Actually, on the nickname front, I recently learned that I guess down in like Peru, they call all Chinese or like all Asian people are just called Chino.
No, I'm sure that's appropriate.
I don't think it is because it just means Chinese, I guess. But.
Right.
So, what did we think about the entirety of the plot? The mistaken
such as it is.
such as it is. I mean, you got this mariachi. He rolls into town. There's basically no one who wants to hire him, and he ends up walking into a hotel and getting mistaken for this other dude, and then he ends up hiding in probably one of the best places to hide.
Well, you gotta start with the thing that put him on that course toward the missed identity in the first place, because when he gets to town, he walks into this bar, and you got like these two dudes at this one table, and then you got the bartender, and he goes up, orders a soda, and the bartender looks at him like he's insane, and he's like asked if he's got work, and he's like, why would I hire a mariachi when I have a whole band? And then he gets this dude's just sitting in the corner doing nothing. He picks up his keyboard, he comes over, plays a few bars, then goes and sits down.
It sounds like polka. It sounds like polka more than Mexican music.
Almost. Well, part of the thing is, I saw this in the director commentary, Rodriguez was on the end of a roll of film, and he didn't want to waste it, and he didn't want to call it too early. So he sped up the film during that scene, partly to make fun of the music that the guy was doing. And that speeding it up probably did make it sound more polka-fied than it would have if it was a regular mariachi.
Right.
It kind of did give it a fun little effect. But I just kind of like that. The dude's just chilling in the corner. He gets up, plays one piece of a song, goes back. It's like, what was he doing in the whole time?
Dude, right. That's a game changer, though. Now I think I'm going to go around speeding up mariachi music all night just to see what it sounds like.
Right. But
I don't know. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so then after that, he leaves, and then the other dude comes in, kills everyone at the table, and it leaves the bartender alive, and bartender calls Moko with that very vague description, and that's where they start that.
Well, and see, that kind of carries on into, I mean, we don't know if they're talking about a later occurrence. No, never mind, I'm wrong. We'll get to that when we talk Desperado. I'll cover what I was mistaken on, but they do refer to the soda pop and all that stuff in the subsequent movie. I don't know. I think the plot works, man. It's like a kind of mistaken identity shit is a classic sort of story device, I think. Of course, I can't think of any movies that use it right off the top of my head right now.
And
I feel like there's definitely a Zatoichi movie that has a very similar plot, though.
Well, there's enough. I mean, you got your Hitchcock ones like the Man Who Knew Too Much and that kind of stuff, and North by Northwest I think had that basic idea. You got movies like Date Night kind of use that idea. It's been used off and on through the years.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing. The whole movie comes across very much as a prototype. And I think had I seen it at the time and there'd never been Desperado or Once Upon a Time in Mexico, I might still remember it as, like a decent low budget Mexican film.
Right.
But I don't think it would stand out to us as much as it does knowing what comes after it and seeing the stuff that they take from this and expand on in the other movies, It does its job.
It makes me think I need to go. What's up?
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No. Finish your thought. Sorry.
Oh, no, I was just saying it does its job. It serves to move it all forward and get people shooting at each other, which I suppose is the end result we're looking for there. What were you going to say, bud?
Right.
I know that I like the part where he got to prove to Domino that he is a mariachi. Where he's sitting in the tub.
You mean the part in the bathtub?
Yeah, where he's sitting in the tub. And she's like, "Sing me something," or something like that. And she's got.
Oh yeah, I love that song he sings.
And it's just comical in a sense because
Mhm.
words that he says have got a lot more fire behind them than you really know because he's
Yeah.
basically saying talking about her in a sense, I guess.
Mhm.
But in any
Right.
case, so is there anything else that we technically need to talk about this movie before we move on to let's see special effects?
Well, such as they were, obviously all practical in this one. Um, and actually, this trilogy is kind of fun for watching the progression of Robert Rodriguez in special effects department. Because he, again, in this one, he had no budget for effects. He estimated that what you see on screen probably cost $600 total.
That's
Which
amazing.
is, yeah. And so basically, for this one, I know for the blood spatter and that sort of thing, they basically used blanks and squibs and like sort of like I think they said they used an exercise band with blood-filled condoms basically, and
Classic.
just exploded those. And that was pretty much it on the effects. There wasn't much else effect-wise.
In El Mariachi or in
El Mariachi, yeah.
Okay.
I think the evolution of his style is pretty amazing to watch too.
Right.
Because if anybody just drips with style in their filmmaking, it's Robert Rodriguez. And
Especially with how quick that it happened and how good he's always been with visual effects. It's one of the reasons I'm so PO'd that Alita did not get a visual effects nod this year because it was incredible. But yeah, whatever.
yeah, dude has an eye for this stuff for sure, man. I mean,
Oh, he does.
even in this, there's like little tastes of what we get later on. You know, obviously like expanded on because he had more money and more experience, but like the special effects are good, but I think that's the stuff that attracts me more to El Mariachi is seeing that.
Right. Because basically the entire budget for the film was a little over $7,000, and most of that was film. So, and some of the production stuff. So he didn't even pay most of them. It was basically him and Carlos worked around everyone's schedule, so they wouldn't even have to feed them lunch in most cases.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Cheap bastard. Anyway,
that you want to be in the movie, brown bag it.
Right. Well, actually, if you listen to him talk, he is all about low budget filmmaking, and that's kind of it's pretty intriguing. And I was impressed with what he got with this one.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're gonna stack it next to other low budget like genre movies or whatever, it's up there for sure. You know, it's to me is like the Evil Dead of action movies almost.
Well,
but now
I would say like these are very much, even though they have criminal elements, they're very much the spaghetti westerns of the 90s.
Yeah. Oh yeah, like the later ones for sure. You know, it's like they basically took a pinch of like samurai spaghetti western shit, mixed it in with like even, the shoot. Go ahead. Sorry.
Even this one, because this is kind of like his Man with No Name trilogy. You know,
a little bit, yeah.
You got the lone man walking into town. Nobody wants him there.
Actually, in a very real sense, because you really don't know his name. I mean, you know, he's referred to as El Mariachi, and you know, in the third one, it's often shortened to L. I mean, particularly Johnny Depp's character just calls him L, but it's kind of yeah. But it's kind of fun to. You're right. It is kind of a man with no name thing, and that's pretty cool. That's a lot of fun.
Well, it's got elements of like all that fun shit, you know. There's a little bit of spaghetti western samurai shit in there. There's a little bit of like the shoot 'em up movies from the Grindhouse era type shit in there.
Yeah.
And then you definitely got a little John Woo, a little bit of like, you know, pulp comic book hero shit in the later ones. and he went
Not to
full nerd
mention
with
that-
it, boys. Like he just did
Yeah.
go full nerd with it all the way.
And not to mention that Rodriguez is Tejano, Gallardo is Mexican, and they definitely gave there's that nice little local flavor to it as well that
Yeah.
you wouldn't have necessarily gotten otherwise. And actually, one thing they mentioned in the comments, there's another film from that era that I need to revisit because the first time I saw it, I hated it. I thought it was an awful version of the book. But now I realize it was such a low budget film. Maybe I was just being too harsh on it. But I believe Gallardo was part of the film Like Water for Chocolate. And they talk about they used the tub from that film in this one. And I need to give that one another look because I haven't seen it in years. And I did not have the appreciation for low budget films back then. But there is a little bit of similarity in that was a totally different genre and film, but some similarities because of the people involved and what have you.
being
Familiar flavor.
being someone who watches low budget films for a part of a hobby, there are levels of degradation that some films can go through, and this one is definitely up there as far as levels of independency that film has reached kind of a status where it's kind of like one of the better films that were out there at the time. So.
Oh yeah, dude. I mean, just Desperado alone, it spawned like one of the most iconic action movies of the entire 90s, which had some good ones, but compared to the 80s, you know, you need movies like Desperado to hold up against that shit.
Right.
Before we head into discussion on that film, why don't we talk about favorite scenes from, or did we already mention some favorites?
We've gone over a couple of mine for sure. I don't know. I'll let Jake take it off after. I think you had something you were going to say right there, bud.
As far as favorite scenes and stuff, I do think probably a couple of those early scenes, like that bar scene and the prison scene, those were pretty cool. I'm not sure that there were any specific scenes that really leapt out at me because there were a lot of good. It's one of those ones where there are like a lot of good little moments, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I think probably a couple of those early scenes would be at the top. That bar scene being a good example.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'd probably throw the whole sort of finale out there where he gets his hand shot and all that stuff. That was good for me. I enjoyed it.
Okay.
His hands all fucking splayed open and shit.
I enjoyed that, but I think I already mentioned mine with the tub scene. So
it's a good one.
But
it's like I said, you know, I very much get even like if you watched it on its own, it would be an all right movie. But knowing what comes later, it's hard for me not to watch it still and think of it as like a prototype, you know? So it all just sort of is a good thing, but it doesn't have like that, you know, sort of scene that stole the show for me, like Desperado does maybe.
Right.
No, Desperado. That was filmed how many years later?
95, wasn't it?
Yeah, I believe so. Yep, 1995. And why don't I go here and see what IMDb says about the film. So, former musician and gunslinger El Mariachi arrives at a small Mexican border town after being away for so long. His past quickly catches up with him, and he soon gets entangled with the local drug king Bucho and his gang. So, In the very beginning of this film, we get a very stellar performance by Steve Buscemi,
Mm-hmm.
where he tells the story uh, of a man in black
Mm-hmm.
who evidently laid slaughter to a bar in several towns away.
Biggest Mexican he's ever seen.
Yes, which he really isn't.
So
I did want to make, before we'll go too far off of El Mariachi, I did want to make one point. The film is considered one of the most profitable films of all time. Off of the 7,000 budget, it made roughly 2 million at the box office.
Isn't it in
which
Guinness?
was roughly, it was, I think, in Guinness. So it made essentially 29,000% profit.
That's fucking
according
amazing.
Although I'm looking at a site that lists it at number 5, this site says that Paranormal Activity made 1,289% profit.
That makes sense,
But I also read an article recently that debated just how profitable some of those films were. If you take marketing and all that kind of stuff out of the equation, I think El Mariachi is one of the top earners. And it is also worth noting that when Rodriguez shot it, he thought he was going to sell it to Spanish home video company for like straight to video, and they wouldn't buy it. So he ended up taking it to festivals, and it was a hit.
I bet you they're kicking themselves over that.
Yes. So sorry about that. I just
Oh, no worries.
So
I mean,
to the next one.
I would definitely say too that like if you're a fan of the last two, you should definitely see this if you haven't. El Mariachi should be like, it's like an inside joke, but it's obviously it's not a joke. It's a full fucking movie, but it's it's like when you watch it, you get some of those little things in the later ones that they're alluding to from the first one. Because with Desperado, they very much sort of, I don't say wipe the slate clean. They just sort of mess it up a little bit so you can't tell what they'd drawn before, and then they made a new picture out of it.
What do they call that? Like a reboot qual or something like that?
I feel like that's a good word. I'll allow it.
I would say that they kind of rebooted it in the sense of, I mean, Antonio had to like become the El Mariachi. He had to create his own character out of it, and I think he did.
He certainly did.
This was definitely his come out role, I think. Mm-hmm. Besides being Zorro, was that later?
Well, that was later. I think this one kind of. Well, you could say this one pretty much led directly to Zorro. In a sense, because he probably
some hard
wouldn't have
elements of that stuff later too. Well, there is somewhat in Desperado, but once upon a time they go like full pulp comic with it. I loved it, but they definitely, they do it. They condense El Mariachi essentially down to his little backstory of why he wants to come at these people, and they kind of, I think they changed some things because who the fuck was Bucho? He had nothing to do with the first movie,
right? So this one had a 7 million budget, so it was considerably larger budget, and I'm sure a good chunk of that went to hiring Antonio Banderas, Salma Hayek, Joaquim de Almeida, Cheech Marin, Steve Buscemi, Quentin Tarantino, Danny Trejo. I mean, this has a pretty impressive cast.
They did the right thing. They got some good names in there, and they blew a lot of shit up, and that's what we came to see,
Yeah. Although at the time, I guess the biggest name to American audiences probably was Cheech Marin. Yeah, as far as who they got in there.
There is something to be said about this fucking blown Antonio up, though, for sure, man. I mean,
well, he was already a superstar in Spain when this came out.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Fun fact
Yeah.
here: my mom and my aunts have a little saying. I'm sure other older women have it too, where they say like, "He can eat crackers in my bed any day." The only men I've ever heard that said about by those two specifically, my mom and my aunt, is George Clooney and Antonio Banderas. Needless to say, when I wanted the Desperado poster as a Wemo, there was no
Right.
argument. You know, they just bought it for me.
Nice. Well, it's like I said, you gotta admit the dude has charisma. I mean, him and Salma Hayek probably are two of the most charismatic people who've
For
ever worked in Hollywood.
sure, for sure. I mean, dude, I didn't
Yeah.
even like that, and he could eat crackers in my bed just because of that charisma. Post up, Antonio.
Selma Hayek.
Right.
Selma Hayek
Yeah.
is so like nerd hot too. That's something I've noticed
Oh,
the more I've looked at her lately. It's like I think she is hot like traditionally too, but
Mhm.
the part of the hotness of her is she totally looks like a girl that would own a bookstore. You know?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, she's believable in the role. I mean, not only that, but also when she has to play more of a badass later, she does it.
But one
Although,
of the elements of this film that this particular film that I like is that he ends up running into this young kid who has a guitar, and he starts to teach him how to play.
Mhm.
And even though his busted hand is fucked up,
Right.
he's still able to tell him to how to make it a little better. And then later you actually see the kid like playing like really well.
Dude,
Well,
yeah,
there's
that
a
guy.
streetwise kid in every one of these movies, which actually is kind of a fun little theme they do.
True. I love that, though I would give this kid my vote above the Chicklets kid in Once Upon a Time because he was just selling his
The
gum.
Chicklets kid.
Yeah.
At least he was screaming.
I actually
That
found it
scene-
kind of.
Go ahead.
Mhm. Well, I was going to say I found it kind of crazy that as crazy as is Depp's character is, that he has that little kid who just takes right to him. That was kind of fun.
I got things to say about Johnny Depp because that is
Yeah, we'll
amazing.
get to that.
But that whole scene with the guitar and like him trying to play it, that's probably my favorite scene in the trilogy, honestly. I don't know why, just for some reason him struggling with it, and then how he's like fuck it, and he like spins the guitar and gives it to the kid and tells him to practice every day. It just reminded me so much of like something you would see in a samurai movie. Obviously, like Sans guitar or whatever, it would be something else.
Right.
But it was such a samurai moment kind of thing.
Right.
Where it's like I can't do
Six-string
it.
samurai.
There we go.
I do like the opening musical number. I always love that. Not just because the music kicked ass, but it was just fun.
Oh man, he's strutting across the bar. He like whips that
Right.
guy with the guitar neck. I mean, just everything about that gets you totally fucking fired up for the movie before one bullet has left the fucking chamber, you know?
And then you got, of course, speaking of, you got that early bar scene where Buscemi comes in and whips them into a frenzy. Cheech Marin standing behind the bar looking more and more nervous.
And it's, you know, I do have something I wanted to point out about that, because it's like, how does it make sense to send this gringo motherfucker who just looks weird and is going to rub people the wrong way immediately in there to fish for info? Like, dude, he's lucky they didn't shoot him right there.
I don't think he was
would've
fishing
shot
for
him right
info.
Well, no, that because
it was more like trying to. Yeah.
No, he comes later and he tells him like he's there. As soon as I mentioned the shit, they like flipped out. You know?
I hate to say this, but Danny Trejo had the baddest hair day ever.
Hey, come on, dude. I thought his dude was pretty fucking bumping.
I thought his bumping in Once Upon a Time in.
Well, okay, Dave, you can feel free to say whatever you want, but like I can't imagine anyone going up to Danny Trejo and saying something like, "Dude, you got to fix your hair."
I fully believe that Danny Trejo would be the type of guy to make cracks on his own hairdos in various movies, depending on whether or not they were his choice. But I liked how he was keeping it high and tight in Desperado. Like,
right.
He's a little greasy in Once Upon a Time, but it fits his character.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. So,
in any case, let's look at the plot of this films.
okay.
Yeah, fire it out there, Dave. Sorry,
Uh,
we kind of got off track there, but
Apparently, he is the El Mariachi that we supposedly saw in El Mariachi, and evidently this is some years later, and he's basically sent one of his confidants in to kind of just scare the bejesus out of these guys before he really fucking kills the guys. I mean, and then while he's in this town, he ends up realizing that this kid is actually carrying drug money for this Mexican cartel that is run by Bucho.
I think that's after he shoots up the bar, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's after he shoots up the bar.
And then I think that's after Danny Trejo too, because he's all fucked up. There's like that epic scene where he's walking along the wall and leaving the blood like behind him.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Beautiful.
And Selma Hayek's character, she's kind of doing the same thing in her bookshop. She's for a certain amount of money, she's carrying or letting drug dealers come in and take whatever, and
Well, it's a cartel town. They're all drug mules, essentially.
Yeah.
Everybody's on the take. They're letting their businesses be like delivery, pickup, drop-off points for drugs, or delivering them in fucking guitars like that poor little son bitch.
Yeah.
Hey, beats selling chiclets, though. Am I right?
Yeah, right.
Well, and Antonio Banderas' El Mariachi character starts to shoot up many of the drug cartel that are in his employ, and from what I understand, he comes into town and starts to do things himself. It figures if he can't have his droogs do it, better off to start to do it himself. Even though he's got like that number one guy, the number one dick sucker, dude, that number one.
Oh, yeah. Old Angry Miguel or whoever the fuck his name was.
Yeah.
I like that part where he's all blown to shit and he still takes the time to put on his sunglasses. Like, of course, I can respect that. But isn't the whole reason they give us for him going after Bucho is that he's like not the dude that shot his girl in his hands? They don't really explain a bunch of it. It's just like, well, he has this flashback during the opening musical number of the white dude lighting the match on that guy's face, all fucking badass. And then, like, now he's after Bucho because he was part of that cartel or something? Is he just going Punisher style and deciding that he needs to kill everyone? Not really sure what his motivation in going after Bucho initially is, right? Like
that was Carlos Gomez. He didn't even have a name. He was called the Right Hand.
He wasn't credited with a name. That was like
Nope.
most of the fucking movie. Jesus.
Yeah, they called him Right Hand.
Wow.
Or the guy that was with Bucho. Yeah.
Well, I dub him Angry Miguel from here on out because he was an angry fella. I like how he snatched that gun out of Bucho's hand when he like pointed it at his head.
Well, and then of course I love how later on they got him a new car, and they didn't even give him the new number for it or whatever.
Oh my God, is that scene amazing? That where he's demonstrating how easy it is to just shoot someone you don't know.
Oh, you're right. Where Bucho that grabs the gun and tests the bulletproof glass.
Because essentially what happens is they can't find Antonio Banderas, because the bookstore lady is hiding him. Like, he comes in and he shoots up the fucking bar, gets all jacked up, like, in the process afterwards because a straggler came out and almost shot him.
that whole bar scene.
Okay.
That was like some comic book shit.
Oh, it had it all. It had, blood, touch of gore, crazy action sequences. What's that?
I love how he shot the one guy and he just flew back.
Right. Are you talking about the one where like the guy's jumping at him and he shot him and
gets him
that was fun.
All the way across the room.
Right.
That's
that was a pretty impressive scene. Pretty crazy,
possible.
A lot of improper gunplay, but
Right.
we're not here to critique the technique.
No.
And apparently,
at one point, Antonio Banderas is firing bullets like he's shaking maracas or something, and it's like, what in the fuck is going on here?
And again, this ties into what we were saying earlier. This shows the evolution of the Rodriguez as a filmmaker. This film also had a lot of practical effects, but it had a lot of visual CG effects too. Like I think that scene we already mentioned where he's walking along the wall and there's the trail of blood.
That
If I remember correctly, that was posted in digitally.
That breaks my heart. I swore I thought that he had like some type of pump inside because he was holding his shit, and I thought he was like squirting it out.
I feel like I saw somewhere they showed what happened there, but
still a beautiful scene. I'll never complain about it. It's like probably one of my favorites in the movie.
Well, like that scene that you were just talking about shooting that guy, they had to use wire to make him go flying backwards and that sort of thing.
See, that I'm fine with because they really flung the motherfucker across the room,
Right. And then they okay, so then you also have a subsequent bar scene that features Quentin Tarantino in one of his rare acting roles, his thankfully rare acting roles. It's actually one of the better performances I've seen him give.
I like him and stuff.
Basically
he's usually annoying, like he was in this.
Well, that's the thing. Yes,
because
Tarantino, he's a wonderful writer and director, but he has this look about him of this like really smarmy kind of. I don't know how to say it. Like, I am the shit. That's the look he has about him. It's just
he has a way of playing up to it and never shutting the fuck up too in like movies where he shows up. So it makes he's supposed to be that guy that you're immediately like, I'm gonna shoot him in the face if I find an excuse. Yeah.
And of course they do in this one, so it's all good. But actually, I've never seen Little Nicky, but I've been told that him getting killed in Little Nicky was the best part of the movie.
Yeah, it's mostly abysmal, man.
So at any rate, I don't remember how much later that was, though. I just remember that being. Didn't that kind of go close to the introduction of?
It directly precedes the first shootout in the bar. Like you get Steve Buscemi, then you get the musical number, then you get them coming in. They take him in the back, and then remember there's that part where Antonio's shooting up the bar, and
right. That was
looks at the monitor, and he's like, "Is that going on right now?" And,
I did kind of like that. I was like, "Yeah."
The dude that gets away after shooting fucking Quentin in the face is the guy that comes running at him, all awkward for a super long time with two guns outstretched instead of just shooting him at any moment that he had to do it before Salma Hayek was there to give it away.
Yeah. So and then let's see here. I'm trying because it's been about a week or so since I saw this one, so I'm trying to remember the exact order. But anyway, you get a lot of fun set pieces. You get him visiting Salma at the library and finding out, what really happens there. And library / bookstore / cafe.
It's a cafe. She totally has like menu items written on that table that she's working them on. So
that was a pretty cool concept overall.
That's how they get shot, like protecting. She sees the dude running behind him, and then he's like, "Get down!" And then fucking the dude shoots his shoulder, and then he's wrestling with the guy. He almost shoots Salma Hayek, and then Antonio puts the guns to his dome and blows his brains out. There's like nice chunky brains all over his face. It's pretty good.
Nice chunky. Yeah. And then you get the not long after that, of course, you get their nice little tete-a-tete scene that I have very fond memories of.
Dude, that fucking love scene freaks me out so hard. It's fine until the point where Salma Hayek puts Antonio's full fucking chin in her mouth. Like, what the fuck? I've never in my life had a girl just fucking like mouth my chin. And then he's running like a spur down her back. Those guys are freaks. So I love it.
I'm not complaining now. I thought it was really cool how they did it in like ultra close-ups and just kind of like they didn't go for the usual tawdry angles you would expect, you know? So that was kind of fun.
And it was somehow filthy, so they achieved something.
And then you had
like, how does that even come about?
And somewhere in there, you do have the thing happening where once again, they're looking for, in this case, the biggest Mexican you ever seen, which he isn't. And he's dressed in black. And so, of course, the killer that Bucho sent in on his own, played by Danny Trejo, finds himself in the crosshairs of the other group who didn't know he was there. And then they proudly bring this guy back to Bucho, and it's like,
that was my guy that
y'all done screwed up here.
No,
you killed Danny Trejo. You killed Danny Trejo.
His character was sent by Bucho, whoever Bucho's boss was, because remember he's like, our own people are watching us or whatever.
Oh, that's right. It was his boss.
Bucho tried to tell him. He was like, I need a fucking description so that our guys don't kill the wrong person.
Right.
And that's what happens.
That's right. His bosses didn't give him one. I remember that now.
Did you expect to realize that that all of a sudden, what the fuck? The ending, who Bucho really was to Antonio Banderas' character?
Well, yeah, I suppose we got to talk about that at some point.
And ladies,
it's my brother. Why not? Why the fuck not? I mean, was there any build up to that at all? Even I don't think so. There was no mention of his brother being or anything. So
no, there was no build up at all. No even suggestion that it was. So I think it was like a last minute decision. Almost because I swear that some of this movie was somewhat ad-libbed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's something we'll talk about towards. Yeah, I don't know about ad-libbed, but it's something we'll talk about towards the end because there's stuff in Once Upon a Time I want to touch on as well. But I think there was a couple of planned sequels. Maybe they weren't made public knowledge, but I think there was a couple of planned sequels in this franchise that didn't happen at some point. Well, fuck it. I'll just tell you right now. Once Upon a Time, the daughter is very much like a thing that is left out. Like it shows the mom and the daughter get gunned down, but then it just shows him with Salma Hayek there on the ground. So I think
real random slight return to what we were just talking about because this amuses me. Per IMDb, Rodriguez said in the commentary, I meant to watch the commentary. I'll have to watch it one day. But he said that the day they shot the love scene, the entire crew showed up to see it. But he continued saying that apart from the actors, only he and the script supervisor were actually in the room.
Oh, man.
So it's like everyone showed up and they were so disappointed.
I was so hoping that he let him in there and there was like a crowd for the chin part so they could all be like, what? Together, because witnessing that in person is probably the only thing I can think of that was more horrifying than seeing it on the screen.
All I think about is just some random DP guy holding his thing and out, and you see it start to inch closer to the chin. You know,
right, dude? That's some shit that you don't even think you really saw. Like, I'd be there, like, did that bitch really just put his chin in her mouth? that really just fucking took place. And then all I can think about for like the next 15 minutes after every time I see that is like a mouthful of Antonio stubble. That just doesn't sound like a fucking good time.
This one had all kinds of fun stuff in the background. Apparently, Buccio was originally to be played by Raul Julia, but he pulled out because his health was failing, which is kind of a shame, although I like Joaquin Almeida's version of the character. And then I love this, that during the production of the film, Rodriguez and Danny Trejo discovered their second cousins.
That's awesome.
They did not know this. Yeah.
I guess that's maybe, and then they used it in the next movie to explain how we have the same, I guess they're second cousins. There you go. So
well,
we got Cheech and Danny back or whatever.
Well, no. His explanation for Cheech was he forgot he killed him in Desperado.
That's amazing.
It was supposed to be the same character, and he forgot he killed him.
I hope that's fucking true and not just him hamming it up.
Right. But at any rate, yeah, it's what you're saying. Apparently, Rodriguez does create stuff off the cuff pretty readily, but because of his emphasis on low budget, he doesn't waste film. So anything that was off the cuff probably would have been decided on before the camera started rolling in most cases. So yeah, at least the way I'm reading this. But anyway, I have to say that at the rate we're going, I'm probably going to lose power before we finish the third one. Just a heads up. But anyway,
it's been fun though, for sure.
Go ahead and plug your phone in or whatnot. What you need to
well,
do.
the thing is, the phone's overheating, so I may have to drop the visual at some point soon. I might be able to continue audio. But
Your beautiful
at any rate,
visage will live on in my mind's eye. Okay.
But at any rate, so I'm sure there were some notable scenes we skipped. I'm trying to remember what they were.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Desperado is very much too a movie where it's the plot's there. I mean, it's definitely it's a thing that exists. But at the end of the day, it serves for action scenes, you know. The basic gist of the plot is dude from the first movie, now played by Antonio Banderas, comes to town hunting down this fucking cartel dude that we have no idea how is related to the the reason why he's fucking out for revenge or whatever. Turns out it's his brother because no reason, and then you know there's some gunfights. That's
and an accidental love interest in the mix, you know. So
there's nothing accidental about Salma Hayek, dude.
And along the way, we are treated to some pretty badass visual set pieces. You know, some great action, like you said, but also some other cool little tricks and a pretty rockin' soundtrack. I mean, this movie has one of the best soundtracks I think I've heard. It's a good one.
It's tasty.
Including, let me see if I can look it up here. I think this is the one. There are elements I kind of confuse. Even though this is the one I've seen the most, I think I've seen this film probably 4 or 5 times, which makes it the one I've seen the most out of the bunch.
Ooh, shit, that's a good topic right there. How many times have you seen Desperado, Dave?
How many times have I seen Desperado?
Yeah.
At least 3 times.
See, it's one of those movies, man. Like I would wager if we asked casual people on the street in the proper age range, they would all have the similar answers. Like I've seen it either like 3 to 5 times, or I've seen it fucking bunches of times. But it was one of those movies for sure. You know, I think we've undersold a little bit. Like that Desperado out of all 3 of them, definitely I feel like has the biggest legacy. You know. People are gonna remember that shit for fucking ever.
Well,
El Mariachi and even Once Upon a Time, like there might be those casual people. I haven't seen those, but Desperado was like a hot rental movie. I feel like for a long time, probably. Because think about it in those terms, you know, if you're dropping your $1.50 or however the fuck much it costs to rent a movie, you're getting it right there with Desperado, guaranteed. I know I rented it more than once.
Let's talk about special effects here.
Okay.
Ooh, gosh, there's plenty of great ones. I mean, gunshots, squibs, or whatever, those types of effects were just as, if not obviously a lot better in this one.
Oh yeah.
We had some wire effects, dudes getting flung around. That's always cool. I would hope they had some wires on old Tony when he was back jumping off of that fucking house.
Right.
Definitely, we had some good fisticuffs up in there too. That's like one of my favorite scenes of Desperados, the little like Street Fighter moment that they have randomly in Bucho's backyard. The kid gets his leg, like savagely broke, but still somehow neck breaks this dude with a single kick. Why didn't you just do that at the beginning of the fight, kid? Yeah, it's just, and then you got all the explosions, which there is at least a solid like 4 or 5 of them, I feel like.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Which, call me an easy date or whatever, but if you're gonna blow shit up in fantastic fashion, I don't even give a fuck what the rest of the movie is about, honestly.
Okay,
light it up, baby.
The one I was trying to think of was in Once Upon a Time in Mexico, but it is notable that both of these films actually feature songs sung by Salma Hayek. She did Quédate Aquí in this one and Ciento de Amor in the second one, which is kind of cool. Don't think of her often as a singer, but she does a good job.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah.
I agree. I've heard her voice before, and she's not bad.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather watch her dance seductively with a snake.
She's not exactly. She's not exactly Selena, but
No.
there can only be one. Selena was like some Highlander shit, man.
Right. Yeah.
Damn good movie. True. That's why I still think of J-Lo as like Selena, because you guys remember that movie?
Oh, there was so much hate on her when that came out, but it was a good performance, no doubt about it. But
it's like Blue Diamond Phillips, bro. Like, I think of him as the La Bamba guy, or Fighting Bats as like a sweet fucking police officer. You ever see that movie?
Yeah.
It was pretty terrible.
Yeah. But yes, like I say, the effects are definitely an upgrade in this one. Overall, another thing that's very notable is that, and we didn't really mention, in El Mariachi, Robert Rodriguez did everything, pretty much everything. He held the camera, he did the editing, he did the music composition, he did pretty much everything. And in this one, he had a crew, but he still did a lot. I think most of his films have something like shot and cut by Robert Rodriguez at the beginning of the film, Well, so he has remained his own editor and cinematographer in most of these films.
Yeah, I think even in the third one, it says like chopped, and he gets fun with like the credits of them. It says like a Robert Rodriguez flick and Once Upon a Time and stuff.
Right. But I don't know exactly when he brought in, when he opened Troublemaker Studios, but once he did, that brought in a few extra folks. But it's pretty cool to think of someone that involved in all the. But Desperado definitely shows a wider world than one person could possibly do. You know what I mean? Like it does show that there was more involved behind the scenes, but yeah.
I think in overall, in terms of like anything effects based, all that stuff was pretty great. Any problem I would have with the movie is more in the like choreography, or some of the gunplay in it is a little stupid, And they seem to tighten that up in Once Upon a Time. Like, even as over the top as that movie is, people are handling guns like guns. They're not shaking them like maracas while they're dancing across the bars. Come on, bro. Right. That's a little on the nose, but I think that a lot of the stuff that they maybe overdid in this one, they kind of evened out in Once Upon a Time. You know,
Well, part of it also had to do with using, like they couldn't use. I think in the first one they mostly used real guns that were borrowed. In this one, I think they tried to use more prop guns, and it didn't always work. So they had to, and apparently Antonio Banderas had a bad habit at first of mouthing the when he would fire a gun, he would do like bang, 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 and he had to break the habit.
Well, that's like some childhood shit right there.
Yeah, that was kind of funny. But I can't remember if it was with this one or Once Upon a Time in Mexico that they said that was the biggest problem.
I kept thinking that Antonio Banderas had trouble speaking some English at times.
You know,
I don't know about that.
Know. I think he's pretty fluent in it. I think he adds a little swarthiness or whatever they call it to his voice, where he's like, "I'm Antonio Banderas." Like he can totally say it normal.
It's like as they do that one SNL sketch where he's like, "Hello, I am Antonio Banderas."
Like he is Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
Actually, it's funny you mentioned that because I actually did watch the first Zorro movie he did last night, and there's the scene where he kills the captain, and I heard him go in my mind. I heard him say, "You killed my brother. Prepare to die." But yeah, that was it's pretty fun.
I don't know. Do you guys have like a favorite shootout moment in Desperado? That's probably the thing people are wanting to hear.
I have
favorite shootout.
The bar scene. The bar scene was actually pretty badass.
Yeah, that opening sequence was well, not opening, but you know what I mean. Like, yeah.
Both bar scenes. The one where Steve Buscemi is actually telling the tale of the big bad Mexican.
Yes.
And the total all-out shootout. So to me, those two kind of set the tone of the film. You know.
Mm-hmm.
See, I think the one that really drives it home, though, is the whole shootout after they're back at her apartment and she's like singing on the bed, and those guys are creeping up, and he's like bringing the guns closer until finally they're both pointing at her, and then he kicks her off the bed, and shit just goes nuts. Because dude, you got to remember, like, I'm pretty sure this movie takes place in a day, maybe two, but there is a point later where Bucho says, like, you remember the bar this morning to the girl, and it's like 2/3 of the way through the movie. So definitely, like, he came to town, shot it up, got shot, she stitched him up, he went out later, fucking ended up getting stuck full of a bunch of throwing knives. She like stitches them up again. They have sweet, sweaty, chin biting sex, and then fucking, you know, they storm the place, and that's where you get all the iconic scenes of Desperado, in my opinion, as far as the straight shootout stuff goes, where he's like, they're jumping rooftop to rooftop and there's explosions and shit. And
actually, it is worth noting, I think after this part, this is when they climbed out the window and were swinging, wasn't it?
That's in Once Upon a Time. But...
Oh, right. Sorry.
Yeah, they're not doing Indiana Jones shit in this movie yet.
Right. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and sign back in on the other computer. So just to give you a heads up there.
I'm gonna start the at least saying the introduction piece to One Upon a Time.
Well, we still need your guys' quick favorite moments that are non-shootout moments.
Okay, non-shootout moments.
Non-shootout moments. My non-shootout moment would be the part where he taught the kid how to play the guitar.
Yeah. Cheers, bud.
That was pretty fun. I do like Buscemi's story. I mean, not just the shootout aspect of it, but just the whole. Again, like I
delivery.
said, the way with Marin and the one dude at the bar, and they keep exchanging those worried looks to get more and more worried, and that sort of thing. That was just pretty fun, and
Kind of an unsung moment in the movie is where those like Valley Girl type chicks come in, and they're considering like that one guy's considering just shooting him. He lifts up the book, and Cheech is like, "No."
yeah.
And then they're like, "Your beer tastes like piss," and Cheech is like, "That's because we piss in it." I love that part. But yeah, the guitar part would be mine too, definitely.
Yeah, that was good.
All right, so go ahead, go take care of that computer fix. I'm gonna read this IMDb. Once Upon a Time in Mexico. Subsequent. So Hitman. El Mariachi becomes involved in international espionage involving a psychotic CIA agent and a corrupt Mexican general. This film was filmed in 2003, which means that this is 8 years later. Correct?
Yes. 8 years. I don't know if I agree with that IMDb description. That was, but 8 years, man, and it feels. Am I wrong in saying that even from the beginning of this, it feels like there's a whole movie we missed in between?
I feel like there is a whole movie that we missed in between, or something like that. But evidently, we have this general who is played by William Dafoe.
No, Willem Dafoe was the other dude, which we'll talk about how
he's the cartel leader.
Yeah.
How fucked up is that? What the fuck was going on where Willem Dafoe is in there playing a goddamn Mexican cartel leader? What the fuck? The only thing in the movie I take issue with, really, for the most part, is just how does that happen?
You couldn't take his accent? Or are you still thinking of in that Marilyn Monroe commercial?
Okay, well, let's say this is a little bit like what I was saying earlier with Danny Trejo. This goes for Willem Dafoe too. Do you want to say no to him?
I mean, no, but I would, maybe. Like, no, you can't play a Mexican car. Get the fuck, dude. We'll find something for you, but that's not it.
Well,
but that aside, amazing movie. Sorry, I'll let you continue.
Okay. So apparently we have William Dafoe playing this Mexican cartel dude who ultimately ends up finding someone who can look exactly like him and be in his role, so that he can somehow get released from his duties and try to lead a normal life, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I think it's more so that someone's going to try to put a bullet in his head because he's paying a general to do a coup of the country for him, right? Like, so that's a common thing that those dictator motherfuckers do, is they'll have like a body double to get shot for him, Right. So when you think of that scene where the guy's like all stoked that he's been accepted for it or whatever, and they're sitting at that table, and Defoe looks at him kind of like out of the corner of his eye, like, bummer.
Of course, they got Mickey Rourke in here looking like he's big and mean, just petting his dog.
Yeah.
Oh, he's fabulous. I loved it.
For much of the movie, Selma Hayek is more or less in flashbacks because we don't
completely in flashbacks.
Yeah, that's all of it.
She has died before this begins. Yeah, which is a shame. Yes.
It is. We still get some good stuff with them for sure.
Right.
Obviously, for you, Jake, the swinging on the shackles scene was memorable because it is.
Right.
It's fucking awesome. But it's like, whoa, this went Indiana Jones really quick on us.
Right.
I'm not complaining. It's just what the
And
fuck is going on here?
unlike the Indiana Jones series, the transition to all CG in this one felt much more organic and natural. I didn't think the CG in this was nearly as distracting as it was in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
It was noticeable at points, but
Yeah. But
So we have Johnny Depp shows up in this as CIA stands.
Yep.
And he is kind what do we think of? Well, actually, let's get first impressions here.
Yeah.
Let's go to you, Jake. What did you think of this movie and its plot?
Well, this was, I think, my third view on this one. Maybe second, but it was no more than third. I know I'd seen it before. It had been a while. And my first impression was I liked it, but it was no Desperado. That was my first impression. This time around, it's still no Desperado, but but it's bigger and badder and bolder. You know, huge cast, huge budget. Well, I don't know, not huge budget, but you know what I mean. Like they had everything was more. Everything was to steal a line from Johnny Depp. Everything was muchier, you know, in this one than it was in the others. And I think I appreciated it a little more this time. I did like it a lot. I still think I like Desperado more, but this one had a lot going on. But it was pretty cool.
Yeah, to me, I don't know. It was all over the place for me. I don't think the script was entirely, tightened. Because you had a lot going on.
Right. And I think it's really just an issue of like they probably did have that movie we were talking about that should have taken place in between plans. Yeah. And then Robert Rodriguez was like, I'm doing Spy Kids or some shit. And so we got the condensed milk version of what should have been probably two movies. And I think as we unpack this, it is a mess of a movie. It's a glorious mess of a movie. But it's a mess of a movie. For sure.
Moments.
Let's talk about Johnny Depp's character. So, how are we introduced to this character? Are we introduced to it? We're introduced to him through first we see him as a CIA agent, correct?
Right.
And then somehow he ends up tracking down Mr. Desperado.
Right.
Well, first we see him eating lunch with Cheech. That's, I believe, the first scene.
Exactly.
And he's sitting there and he's talking to him. Yeah, Cheech is one of his rats. And he's telling him, like, we need the information. We brought you the money. He brought it in a fucking Clash of the Titans, like, lunchbox because he couldn't find a briefcase small enough for $10,000. Right. And then there's like a pretty good speech by Cheech where he says some shit about how like $10, you know, he's not a greedy man, so he didn't take the 50,000. He took 10 because it's something they could both live with, and it's cheap enough. He might not shoot him over it or whatever, which I thought was really fucking cool.
And then Depp said, "I'll shoot him for 10."
Well, he says something like he might. You know, it might still be too expensive. Right. And then Cheech says, "You wouldn't dare," or whatever, and he walks out. And Johnny Depp mouths, "I would," or some shit. And then after Cheech leaves, he pulls off the fake arm and reveals that he had like a gun trained on him the whole time and shit. The fake arm is like one of my favorite things. So. And that's our intro to Johnny's character right there.
Yep.
Right. Well, that too, and I'm trying to find the name of the dish, but one notable thing is that almost every time you see him in the first several parts of the film, he is eating a particular pork dish that he specifically says that he orders it at every restaurant. And when he finally meets L, as he calls him, he tells him, he's like, this is the best I've ever had. In fact, it's too good. It's so good that when we are done here, I'm going back in the kitchen. I will shoot the chef because I need to restore order. And one of my favorite Easter eggs on this edition of the film that I have is there's a each one of these movies, there's a 10-minute film school special feature, and they're all worth watching. But the one for this one also has a 10-minute cooking school where Rodriguez himself actually walks you through. It's like a Cooking Channel episode where he walks you through how to make that dish. And it was great, and it made me so hungry.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, that part was savage. But I mean, right from the get-go with Johnny Depp, his character is introduced to be pretty fucking savage, you know?
Right. It's like Depp is not my favorite person right now, but I think this is one of his stronger roles, and certainly one of his most fun roles.
It's my favorite, I think, honestly.
Yeah.
If I had to pick a favorite Johnny Depp role, it's definitely this one.
Right.
Who else are our main players there? We already know Antonio from the last movie.
Right. Well, we also have a federale named Ajedrez, who's played by Eva Mendes, and she's got a pretty big part in there. And you got Kukui, who's the new Danny Trejo character, and he's a local in the employ of Mr. Sands.
Fun fact, Kukui is basically like Mexican Boogeyman, if you guys aren't familiar with Mexican folklore.
I am a little bit.
Yeah.
And then you have Jorge, a retired FBI agent played by Ruben Blades. So that was kind of Oblades, or however you say that properly. Which I totally forgotten he was a musician. And I watched...
And we got Enrique Iglesias.
Right. Yes, speaking of musicians, as Lorenzo. And I want to say, am I remembering correctly that Iglesias did the music in this, or am I making that up?
I think he did some of the music.
I'm not sure. I didn't catch that part.
Okay, let me...
I was looking at the credits to a point, but yeah.
Yeah, so you
I
have
think
a
that,
pretty fascinating cast.
Yeah, I think the FBI guy next to, obviously Johnny Depp's character was my favorite for sure.
He was a very likable character. He was kind of reluctantly dragged in, and then once he got into it, he kind of had fun with it.
Yeah.
And that was kind of,
I enjoyed it.
But it's like I said, I had totally forgotten that he is well known as a musician from back in the day. And last week I watched a documentary on Linda Ronstadt where they showed the two of them in a studio together about 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And I was like, oh, he looked a lot younger then.
All right.
But it was clearly the same dude, yeah. But, yeah, no, the music was by Robert Rodriguez. So I know Iglesias does some movie scores, though, which is kind of cool. But, and incidentally, talking about the cast, the dude they hired to be Barrio's double, the Willem Dafoe double, apparently he actually looks like that. They said that in the in one of the comments I saw that
It's
they
horrifying.
managed to find. Yeah, it is horrifying.
Imagine a grown up looking like Willem Dafoe. Holy shit!
I know.
They managed to find another guy who looked exactly like the Green Goblin.
Yeah.
You will always be able to be the scariest looking person at your Halloween party.
True. Yeah.
I don't know. Danny Trejo is pretty imposing looking too, but you know.
I don't know. I mean, the plot of this is kind of confusing, right? Like,
yeah, a little bit. I mean, well, you know, it says right there he becomes involved in international espionage. That's always confusing.
Because it's like fucking, they want him to go in there, or the CIA, I guess, wants him to go in there and kill the fucking dude that's gonna do the coup after he's done doing the coup.
Right.
So that the president's dead and he's dead.
Right.
And then is Johnny Depp's character also trying to whack that fucking cartel guy?
Yeah, I think so.
And basically, go ahead.
I think, the coup of the whole thing is to stop the assassination of the president, and yet I think Depp.
No. He does not want to stop the assassination. He wants to prevent the people behind the coup from taking power afterwards.
Exactly.
So, if you, in a sense, I didn't find it that confusing because this is not far off from the way CIA has operated, supposedly.
I suppose for me it made sense until they started double crossing each other later, but nothing makes sense once they start double crossing each other. It's just like there were a
lot of double crosses. You got Kukui double crossing Sands. You had Billy double crossing Berrio. You had all these people double and triple crossing each other.
Yeah, it was nuts. And people's eyes getting plucked out. I mean, then everyone's just shooting everyone. It's fucking amazing.
And I have to admit, that scene, there was some graphic gore in this that I had issues with, I will admit. But other than that, you know, it was the fact that it was CG actually helped, though, because that made it. The fact that I could look at it and go, okay, that's not as realistic as it could have been.
Right.
That was kind of, and I will admit, the image of Depp with the sunglasses and the blood streaking down was kind of a striking image. That was, and he did get his little badass moment afterwards. I kind of like that. Where he had the little kid leading him around.
Yeah, that's definitely easily one of my favorite things in the movie is just everything about Johnny Depp's character.
Right.
Well, he was kind of a badass in his own way, you know. I mean, he just had a way about him where he just picked up on this character, and it seemed like, you know, he was a schizoid kind of a character, you know.
What's that?
No, he knew what he was doing. Like he was in there he was in it to win it, you know. He just played too many sides and ended up getting caught in like the double cross there.
And actually, this was during his I am an artiste phase before he really started getting kind of commercial, and you know, and so from what I understand, he actually had a lot of notes about his role. It says on IMDb that he was the one that said he should wear a lot of tacky T-shirts, and it helped create the look for the character. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a little Hunter Thompson in his character in there.
Oh yeah, I think so. And that's usually a good thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Wear mismatched socks or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Well, at least he wasn't. He didn't go full Hunter Thompson. That would have seemed a little too derivative. But
yeah,
like you said, a little bit goes a long way in some cases.
It really does.
And speaking of a little bit going a long way, again, unfortunately, we only had Selma in flashback, but you got to see Carolina as she's been traveling with El Mariachi for a little bit, and she's picked up some tricks. And
definitely,
she was kind of a badass in this one, which, you know, kind of made it all the more unfortunate that they decided that she had to be killed off. It would have been nice if they had opted to do like a side movie or something about like their travels.
Well, that's why I feel like there's
yeah.
like a couple of planned sequels in there that are kind of left open, or at least one, you know. Well, I feel like it's kind of two, because there's like the shit that we missed out on between Desperado and this one, clearly. And then they also, like I said, basically leave the kid alive. So there could be totally a sequel down the road with his daughter or something involved.
Not to mention something else that might be kind of fun as a side project or as a prequel would have been something involving like Billy's character. What sent him to Mexico in the first place? Or the Mickey Rourke character, I mean to say.
Yeah,
that was kind of yeah. Now, of course, Rodriguez does have a history of throwing ideas for sequels out and not really fully committing to them. Like he announced Machete Kills in Space a long time ago, and it's still floating out there in the ether. But one day.
I think this maybe suffers from that a little bit, because it feels like there's some of that maybe went on around this movie, but it's still fun.
Right. I do hope that there's a sequel to Alita, though. There better be. But
I feel like Kills in Space will be kind of just as bad as Leprechauns 4 or I can't really say Hellraiser in space.
I don't know. The first two Machete were pretty classic.
Even it's terrible. I'm looking forward to it.
An Apollo 13.
What?
Yeah.
But at any rate, and he does do a lot of short films as well, which is one thing I was looking to see. There weren't really any short films based off of this one, though. Not really. There could have been. That would have been kind of fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, well. Yeah.
Most of the characters probably deserve their own short film.
Right. You could get a short film for Cheech of how he survived the first movie.
I don't know, man. Do you guys have like favorite scenes in the movie? Because again, we are kind of in one of those ones where I
guess my favorite scene is Johnny Depp's death.
Yeah. I'm a little more general than that. I have to say, most of the scenes with Depp I enjoyed. I really did. I enjoyed his meeting with El Mariachi. I enjoyed his meeting with Jorge. I enjoyed his death scene. There were several really good scenes there. Other than that, some of the flashbacks with Carolina, those were probably my favorite parts. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. I mean, even the opening is like a good highlight of the movie. He's playing that like rustic guitar. He's walking up that thing.
This was another one that had a badass soundtrack. It really was.
It did have a badass soundtrack, from what I remembered. I remembered having both of the soundtracks to these films listening to. But,
see, if we weren't talking about these tonight, these could have been contenders for next month's theme. Yeah. And that's actually, I would say that's true of a lot of Rodriguez films. And of course, his buddy Quentin Tarantino. And it is worth noting that Tarantino suggested the title for this film. He is credited as the one that came up with the title. And some of the plot as well.
I think how wild and fucked up the plot was and how spread out it was because of Quentin Tarantino's influence in Robert.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
He definitely had an influence on that. And he was actually supposed to be in the movie, but I think there may have been some timing issues or whatever. He ended up going to film Kill Bill instead.
Nah.
Which Kill Bill, you were talking about the influences going back and forth. Kill Bill, the part 2, is very much a spaghetti western. The first one's a kung fu flick, and the second one's a spaghetti western.
Yeah, definitely.
And then, of course, the two of them teamed up to do Grindhouse, which I actually got to see in theaters, and I barely was able to make it through Planet Terror. I had the cold sweats, and I was fighting off nausea by the end of the film. The thing that kept me in my seat was it was so freaking hilarious. I thought it was hilarious. It was great.
I was a bigger fan of Death Proof myself.
I was kind of underwhelmed by it. But it was fun. It was enjoyable, but I was a little underwhelmed by it.
Well, it's supposed to be kind of, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a simpler movie for sure.
Well, the thing is, they were trying to make Grindhouse films, and Rodriguez went full Grindhouse. And Tarantino did, well, I'm going to do a Grindhouse film, but it is definitely still going to be a Tarantino film. And it made it a weird sort of hybrid. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't think he went full Grindhouse the way that Rodriguez did. But, yeah, that's just me.
We haven't fully mentioned Eva Mendez's character in this whole ensemble. I just wanted to...
she was a tricky character.
Yeah. Wasn't she a police officer at first?
She's a police officer. At first, you kind of feel for her because she gets passed over, the male-dominated police force. She's kind of treated as the other person in the room, and you feel for her. And then you come to find out she's a sneaky, conniving little thing that has a history with Sands. Yeah. That was
I don't know. I didn't feel too bad when she met her end, especially since Johnny Depp was able to do it.
Right. Yeah.
I don't think he was necessarily as bad as you might think he is initially.
I don't think that this film was entirely all about El Mariachi either.
I think Johnny Depp's character is kind of almost sort of the co-main character of the movie.
Yeah,
because it really is more about the scheme that he's setting up. Like the mariachi just happens to be a player within that, but there's so many other people involved that by the end it's like just this maelstrom of backstabbing and skullduggery or whatever they call it.
Right.
El Mariachi was more or less Johnny Depp's character's patsy, in a sense.
Yeah, he was sort of the dude he was sending in to kill the dude that could take power, so then they could all just blame it on this dude that was coming for revenge or whatever. So it wouldn't have anything to do with the governments. And,
he's the dude that's sent to kill the dude for the other dude to get.
I think they Tarantino'd it a little bit too much, maybe.
But he did get his good moments, and that
there was
definitely
on for this plot. I don't think it was entirely straight edged as it was intended.
I don't know it was intended to be, really.
I think it was just meant to be a fun, over the top, like comic book style ride with the characters, done through like a Tarantino lens to a point, and
Rodriguez, and in his 10-minute film school for this one, Rodriguez was pretty open about this was one of his first opportunities to go hog wild with the visual effects, with the CG. It was one of his first opportunities to really play with that, and he just had a blast doing that. And so it wouldn't surprise me if part of wouldn't surprise me if part of it was just him, this looks cool. But overall, it is a really fun movie. It does come a little unraveled. Yeah. But,
Alrighty. Well, did we want to say? Well, we kind of did say something on the special effects in this.
oh yeah.
And we did kind of somewhat talk
Mhm.
about the soundtrack
Mhm.
and the music.
Mhm.
So, why don't we talk about favorite moments in the film? Do you have any?
I thought didn't we already cover that?
Yeah, we kind of did that, didn't we?
Yeah.
In the whole mix. I mean, I know mine is Johnny Depp's killing the cook scene. I don't know why, but that to me,
The killing the cook.
yeah.
Actually, that's like I said in that cooking episode that he did. He shows that he's like use a brand or whatever your top brand of tequila is. You use that in the mix, and he's got like this high dollar tequila. And a couple minutes later, he comes back to it, and he's like, "You could make it without the tequila. This is why he killed the cook." And he holds up the tequila. You got to admit that would make some good pork.
I don't know, man. I think if I had to pick like a favorite moment in all of it, it might be that opening sequence actually. Because it's like epic at first, and then it's like laughable once he's on top of the fucking castle, and it's like, oh, we're supposed to believe he just played the theme song all the way up there. That's stupid. Why would anyone do that? Dude just climbed the whole castle playing guitar. You know.
That's because he is El Mariachi.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Fiddler on the Roof. If
yes,
like
yes,
that.
Mariachi on the Roof. Yes,
it'd probably be like a tie between that moment and the shooting the cook, maybe.
But one other last little moment, just like a moment. And again, this is with the advantage to watching all three of them within a short period of time of one another. When I saw that dog's collar and I saw that it said Moco on his collar, I thought
that's great.
I love that.
Makes me want to look for other things in there that kind of
Right.
might reference the originals.
All right.
So where would you guys rank this in like the trilogy? I mean, like if you had to put them in order of like your favorite to least favorite.
I would put Desperado first, El
yeah.
Mariachi second, and Once Upon a Time in Mexico third. Because I don't know, there's just a lot going on in this film, and yeah, I enjoy Johnny Depp's character, but I feel like the film was like Antonio Banderas should have been like the main character in this film. Johnny Depp should not have outshined his role, because that's what this whole thing was kind of about. It was kind of about this El Mariachi that just got accidentally into these situations, just kind of fumbled into these situations.
Well, look at it this way, though. If they had done the movie in between that we know was probably supposed to be there, this might have felt like a fun fourth or third movie, or no, fourth movie.
Well, and right? I think actually, as far as not having the other film, I think they may have made that conscious decision. I feel like I read this at some point, that they made a decision to make a trilogy. And it might have been to keep in that sort of like man with no name idea of like the, they didn't necessarily look at a series. But yeah, sometimes when a movie gets too busy, it kind of, you wonder, it didn't fall apart quite as bad as Spider-Man 3 did. But yeah. And it was more fun.
I think if we were going to do it then in a trilogy, I'd have rather had the movie about like him and Salma Hayek going against that army general guy and him killing all of them, except for the kid and Antonio Banderas, because they clearly left the kid alive. Like that just seems like a weird conscious choice to do.
Well,
Yeah.
and I don't
If
get
you
why
weren't
they
planning
killed.
something with
I
it,
don't
you know?
entirely get why they killed Selma Hayek's character off. She,
Right.
you know, that was point blank. There should have been a love interest.
Yeah.
You know,
It made it more tragic that there wasn't, though. You know,
A little bit, yeah. It made him
I mean,
seem like he had nothing to lose, which is fitting for the final chapter, definitely.
right?
But yeah, I wondered about that kid too. I wonder, like, what happened to the kid? They really don't say.
That could have been the second movie. Is fucking like him, or the third movie technically.
Yeah.
Could have been him, like, you know, Salma Hayek gets killed and he's got the kid and he just goes on like an absolute fucking rampage,
Mhm.
destroying all those military dudes.
If Rodriguez ever wanted to return to this trilogy in any way,
Mhm.
shape, or form, maybe he could do the story about the El Mariachi kid that after the second movie or something like that. Tell his side of the story.
Or do one
Right.
of those things where they go back to that, like have fucking him with the kid doing like some lone wolf and cub style shit.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well,
Well, hold on. Did you rank them, Jake?
Oh, well, I mean, Desperado is easily the best one overall in terms of being a fully fledged film, like a more cohesive, well done in terms of a craft standpoint, and it's probably the most fun overall. The other two are really hard to rate against each other for me because they're so different and they come from different aspects. Like one is a very much a low budget film. The other one can play in the sandbox with the regular studio films. It's really hard to say which one's better than the other.
Right.
Mariachi is much simpler.
El Mariachi, I think, is
It's
the
much
Robert
simpler. Yeah. From a storytelling standpoint, it's probably the better one. From an entertainment standpoint, I lean more toward the other one, so it's kind
Yeah,
of hard to say.
Desperado is El Mariachi with the budget, and Once Upon a Time in Mexico is the Quentin Tarantino Rodriguez film. So
Yeah, it's hard for me to, like I said at the beginning, pretty much. It fluctuates for me. It's very much one of those things where, depending on my mood, I might be leaning towards Once Upon a Time as my favorite, or I think it just kind of changes. El Mariachi, though, I find has definitely sort of worked its way out of the equation. I look at that anymore as like the prototype, and it's awesome. But
Right.
Desperado and Once Upon a Time are really like the movies, you know? And
Right.
between those two, I think I would probably agree Desperado's like more well-rounded. But Once Upon a Time is just a fun, you know, chunk of chaos to enjoy.
Controlled chaos.
Yeah.
Very controlled chaos. Random question though, real quick. Did both of you guys have the same set that I showed up before? I think
I
it sounded like you did.
I have El Mariachi separate, but then I have the double
Okay.
feature of the Desperado,
Okay.
the Walmart set that they
Nice.
sold for.
That's sexy, bro. I just still have that fucking regular like Mexico trilogy pack, the DVD one.
I'm just wondering if y'all had the same bonus features. If you do, definitely check out that cooking segment, but also the 10-minute film classes. But Once Upon a Time in Mexico also had another really cool bonus feature. It was an early short film by Rodriguez called Bedhead. Did y'all watch that one?
That
Yep.
sounds interesting. I have not seen it.
Actually, no, that was on. Yeah, that was on Once Upon a Time in Mexico.
Okay.
Basically, he filmed it with his family. It's a little black and white film. And he filmed it with his family. I think it's his daughter and son who play the main characters. It's a fun little movie. It's worth a look.
I'll definitely look into that.
Yeah.
So will I.
That was fun. Yeah.
Alrighty.
All right.
Well, I think that's all the time we have for today, folks, on these movies. Definitely check them out if you have not.
Mhm.
It's a sin if you have not at least checked out Desperado.
Exactly.
That
That's one of the essential films of the '90s,
is
no
a
doubt.
For sure.
that is cardinal
Yeah.
must, at least out of these three films. But definitely check out the trilogy if you can, and let us know down in the comments what you thought of the movie, and where would you rate them,
Mhm.
as far as what your favorites are. So in any case, Jake, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and
Okay. Well, I'm Jake. I am a movie fan and viewer and occasional reviewer here in Central Virginia. I frequently guest on the YouTube channel Septemson versus the World. We got a lot of Oscar-related content going on this time of year, as well as the usual pickups, new releases, all that kind of fun stuff. Um, I have my own YouTube channel, Kotobuki Jake, which is kind of on hiatus until I get a new computer, but it's about nature and the natural world, and there's a few fun videos on there. I do have a Hub Pages account as well that is almost never updated, but there's some fun articles on there, so check it out if you're bored and want to read something. Uh, and other than that, I also frequently join these cast of crazies, both here on Delusions of Grandeur and also Inside Movies Galore, which we've got a pretty good discussion coming up shortly. So,
oh yeah,
all right. And I'll go ahead and also mention, so you all know to plan ahead. I got my birthday video podcast is coming up, where we will be discussing the classic Preston Sturges film Sullivan's Travels and the even more classic Coen Brothers film They Grew Out of It, Oh Brother Where Art Thou? And then we'll be following that immediately with a month whose theme I've chosen, but it looks like my movies probably won't be, so we'll find out. Music Lovers March, where we'll be celebrating music and film, which, like I said, Desperado would be a phenomenal choice for that sort of discussion. All right.
alrighty. So, Mo, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do?
All right. Well, my name is Mosley, and I sometimes review old movies and do pickup videos and stuff, and just assorted crap that I feel like doing on my channel, Drunken Master Studios. Also, occasional contributor to Rebel Gaming Club. Mostly, though, I just hang out and enjoy life and talk about movies with these fine folks lately. And it's been a blast, man. Thanks for having me on here for this. This was a good time.
Definitely, definitely, man. And my name is David Straggy. I run Inside Movies Galore, but I run it with most of you fine gentlemen, and some of the others that you'll probably hear in the following discussion. And I also do my own reviews on my own channel called Delusions of Grandeur. And the only reason why I do some of these discussions under Delusions of Grandeur, other than Inside Movies Galore, these are separate discussions from Inside Movies Galore, and this gives us a broader, while we're doing themes and other kinds of things, and following a certain thing in Inside Movies Galore, we get to kick back and shoot the shit on some of these other films where we're exploring while we're going along the other journey. So this was fantastic that we could actually do 3 films in one, 4 films in one night, because we'll be going on about another film in a little bit, and that is to be explained in the following discussion. So
I kind of did do 4 films in this, though, because there definitely is like that intangible tumor of a movie that should have existed on the side of this trilogy.
Now that though could be an entire discussion in itself, a discussion of what the films that might have been. You know,
Yeah,
you
for
never.
sure.
Actually, it's worth noting that Machete started life as a joke trailer in the Grindhouse double feature. And there were 3 other joke trailers in that double feature, one of which looked like it sucked, but the others looked pretty good. So who knows if one of those will ever get turned into a film.
You know, it'd be fun is down the road, us three get
Yeah.
back together on like the anniversary of this shit or something, and all of us come up with our own sequels that we pitch to each other of what could have been like a sequel to Desperado or something, you know?
Right.
Well,
Just an idea.
I think that a sequel to Once Upon a Time in Mexico was Public Enemy.
Or that.
Mhm. Right.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for some more exciting discussions. We may choose something for next week, so stay tuned for that. We're going to think about it and let you know possibly in the end of the next discussion what we might actually go on about. Stay tuned for that. In any case, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a nice evening, morning, or whatever you're having. We just love to talk about films of all kinds. So thank you so much. Enjoy. Say good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Night, people.